I never imagined her voice would still sound the same after all these years.
5 years, to be exact.
Half a decade since we signed those papers and walked in opposite directions. I assumed time would change everything. Her tone, my reaction, and the heaviness that once lingered between us. But the moment I heard her say my name, every ghost returned as if no time had passed at all. My name's Erin. I'm 42 now. 5 years ago, I stepped out of a courthouse with nothing but a box of fading photographs and a heart that had forgotten what freedom felt like.
Divorce is strange.
It doesn't really end with signatures. It ends months later, when you stop reaching for the other side of the bed, stop expecting messages, and your chest finally loosens at the weight of old memories. I learned that lesson the hard way. Back then, Megan and I had been married for 7 years. It wasn't a bad marriage, at least not in the beginning. We laughed easily, made plans, small ones like weekend hikes or movie nights, and bigger ones like the house with blue shutters she always dreamed of. But somewhere in the comfort, we stopped really seeing each other. She wanted excitement. I wanted peace. We began living parallel lives, close enough to touch, yet worlds apart. I remember the night she told me she wasn't happy. We sat at the kitchen table, the light above us flickering like it couldn't bear the silence. She said, "Erin, I don't feel it anymore. I don't even know who we are." I didn't argue or beg. I just nodded because deep down I already knew she was right. Love doesn't always die with a fight. It fades so quietly that one day you wake up beside someone who feels like a stranger. The divorce was civil, painfully polite even. She moved out first. I kept the house for a year, then sold it. Too many echoes in the walls. I found a smaller place near the lake, started running again, built a routine that depended on no one but me. Life grew simple, predictable, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Then last week, out of nowhere, she called. Her name lit up my screen while I was making coffee. I stared at it for 10 seconds, thumb hovering, unsure if I should answer. My heart didn't race. It just paused, as if deciding whether to reopen an old wound or let it stay closed. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Erin," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Yeah," I replied, steady and calm. There was a pause, one of those that stretch seconds into minutes. "I didn't think you'd answer," she said quietly. I almost didn't. She gave a small laugh, the same one that used to fill our home. "I don't really know why I'm calling," she admitted. "I guess I just needed to hear your voice." What I felt wasn't anger. It was something quieter, heavier, like hearing an old song you used to love but can't relate to anymore. We talked about small things first. Work, mutual friends, her parents who'd moved to Arizona. I told her about my new job, the one that finally lets me sleep at night. Then, suddenly, she said, "I made a mistake, Erin." I didn't speak. I just listened. "I thought I wanted freedom," she continued, her voice trembling. "I thought being alone or with someone new would fill the emptiness. But it didn't. I rushed into another marriage. It fell apart. It wasn't you. None of them were." Her words hit somewhere deep, but not where they once would have. 5 years ago, I would have given anything to hear that. Now, it just felt late. I leaned on the counter, phone pressed to my ear, the smell of coffee fading. "Megan," I asked softly, "why are you telling me this now?" She hesitated. I could almost hear her breath shake. "Because," she said finally, "I think about you more than I should." Her words lingered in the air, somewhere between guilt and longing. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. It had been years since I'd heard her voice tremble like that. Back then, her tears could have broken me. Now, they only reminded me of how far I'd come, from the man who waited for her love like sunlight through closed blinds. "Megan," I said gently, "we both made mistakes." "I know," she whispered, "but mine destroyed everything good in my life." Her voice carried a weight of regret, not seeking forgiveness, but mourning something irreplaceable. There was a time I would have tried to comfort her, to ease her pain. But that version of me was gone. "I'm not calling to get anything from you," she said quickly, almost reading my thoughts. "I just wanted you to know. I see it now.
What you tried to give me.
I wasn't ready then. I let her words settle. There was honesty in them, maybe even love, but love that belonged to another lifetime. For a long time, I told her, I wondered what I could have done differently. Maybe if I'd fought harder, said more, we'd still be together. But I've learned, peace doesn't come from fixing what's broken. It comes from accepting what can't be fixed. She was silent for a long time. Then she said softly, "You sound different, stronger." I smiled faintly. I had to be. I heard her sniffle, the quiet kind when someone's trying not to cry. "Do you ever think about us?" she asked. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not the way you think. I don't replay the fights anymore. I just remember the good parts, the way you'd steal my coffee in the mornings or how we'd stay up late watching terrible movies. Those memories used to hurt. Now they just remind me we once had something worth remembering." She exhaled shakily. "I miss those nights." "I know," I said. "I used to miss them too. But missing something doesn't mean you should go back to it." The line went quiet. I thought she'd hung up. Then, barely audible, she said, "I wish I'd realized all this before it was too late." "Megan," I said softly, "it's never too late to learn, just too late to be who we once were." That broke her. I could hear it. The sharp breath, the sound of someone mourning a life that no longer fits. I didn't feel anger or triumph, only peace. The kind that comes when you finally understand your own story. "I'm so sorry, Erin," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I know," I said. "And I forgive you." The words came easily, not for her, but for me. I'd learned that forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about freeing yourself from carrying their ghost. We stayed on the phone a few minutes longer, mostly quiet. When we finally said goodbye, it didn't feel like closure, it felt like acknowledgement. Two people who had finally stopped resisting what had long been over. After I hung up, I stood by the kitchen window, watching the morning light stretch across the counter. The coffee was cold, but I didn't care. There was a stillness in me. Not emptiness, but calm. 5 years ago, her leaving shattered me. I rebuilt myself piece by piece, learning that solitude isn't punishment when it's chosen. And now, after all this time, her call hadn't reopened a wound. It showed me how completely it had healed. That evening, I walked down by the lake, the same path I once took alone, learning to live again. The water shimmered beneath the sunset, and for the first time, I saw how peaceful life looks when you stop chasing the past. Maybe her words did change me, not because they brought her back, but because they reminded me how far I'd come. Sometimes closure doesn't arrive with apologies or dramatic endings. Sometimes, it's just a quiet call on an ordinary afternoon, reminding you that you're finally okay. And I was. For the first time in a very long time, I truly was.